This game is awesome. I played the demo for Drop Duchy during the last Steam Next Fest. Really enjoyed it, and honestly, I wasn't expecting it to drop so soon. No pun intended. It's basically Tetris, but instead of clearing lines and getting a high score, you're building a little kingdom and battling enemy armies. It looks simple, but hidden beneath that simplicity is a surprisingly deep and replayable puzzle game. I got a few issues with it, mainly tied around the randomization and some builds being a lot stronger than others. But it's definitely one of those games I can easily see myself returning to for years to come. So let's get right into it. It plays like Tetris. You see your upcoming blocks on the left side of the screen, you line them up the way you want, and either drop them down or place them in reserve to be used later. If you manage to fill a full line, you get rewarded. Most of the classic Tetris tricks work too, so if you want to T-spin a wheat field into a gap, go for it. The time you have to place blocks is a lot longer than in normal Tetris, which gives you more time to really think about where and how you'll be using your blocks. And you will have to really think about block placement. Unlike Tetris, the lines don't disappear when they're filled. The game only ends when you either run out of blocks or one of them goes out of bounds. Instead of disappearing, blocks become explored. Doing that gives you resources based on the terrain type. Fields give you food, woods give you lumber, and so on. You use these resources between levels to upgrade your deck and buy new cards. Oh yeah, this is also a roguelike card game. You have a deck of cards that directly translate into some of the blocks you place. Beating a level gives you new cards, and they can be upgraded using the resources you've gathered. I'll get back to that in a little bit, but for now let's get back to the block placing. Other than normal terrain, you also have special production and military blocks. This is where the real challenge of Drop Duchy starts, and where it really differentiates itself from Tetris. Production blocks can be anything from woodcutters to tax collectors. Each one has a specific condition. They can be incredibly rewarding if used correctly. For example, placing a woodcutter next to a bunch of trees clears the surrounding forests and gives you bonus lumber. A tax collector earns gold based on how many other buildings are placed around it. These blocks can also be comboed. One of the earliest combos you have is the woodcutter and the farm. A farm turns the plains around it into farmland, which produces extra food. So if you first use the woodcutter to clear the forest, then place a farm that converts the land into fields, you get a huge boost to your economy. Another type of block is the military buildings. These are similar to production buildings, but instead of giving you resources, they train military units. For example, a watchtower trains units based on how many fields and farmlands are around it. A hidden cave trains units on how many forests and mountain tiles are connected to it. The catch is that you also have to place down the enemy's military buildings, so you're always trying to find a placement that benefits you the most while giving the enemy the least. There are a lot more military and production buildings that get more complicated, but I won't get into those here. You can discover those for yourself. With how important block placement is, your board isn't always gonna look super clean, and sometimes it's better to end a level earlier rather than later, because once the game ends, you enter the combat phase. You got 3 military types: ranged, light, and heavy. They work in a rock, paper, scissors type of way. The stronger type deals more damage, so you'll always want to be careful about which type you use against what. You can choose who attacks who, and even combine your armies if you want. Just keep in mind that the larger group decides the type. So if you merge 10 ranged units with 20 heavy, you'll end up with 30 heavy units. Once you've decided your attack order, you hit go and watch how the battle plays out. If you have any military units left at the end, they get converted to gold. Any enemy unit that survives will deal damage to your health bar. If I have any complaint here, it's that it can be hard to tell how much damage a unit will do to a weaker one. This might just be a me thing, I'm terrible at math, but it would still be nice if it was shown more clearly in game. Now let's get back to the roguelike part. Like I mentioned earlier, between rounds you can upgrade and fiddle with your deck. You're also moving along a randomized game board, choosing which level to take on next. You can hover over each level to preview the terrain type, which is important depending on what build or resources you're going for. There are stops where you can get extra cards or resources, and you can also choose whether or not to avoid combat. Keep in mind though, the more fights you avoid, the stronger the final boss will be. There are 3 acts in a run. At the end of each act is a boss, each with his own gimmick. They're good fun and force you to play differently. When you finish an act, you are forced to choose a terrain type to abandon. That terrain type will turn into a wasteland that gives you no bonuses. Throughout your run, you're also completing challenges. These can make your chosen faction stronger by giving you a better start, and they also give you progress points that you can spend in the game's massive tech tree. Some of these unlocks don't just give you new cards or buildings, they can actually change how the game plays. You can unlock new terrain types, passive tech cards, new factions, and even new resources like faith. I really like this system. It keeps the game fresh and slowly makes it more complicated without overwhelming you. I do feel like not all unlocks are made equal though, and a few seem to exist just to bloat the card pool. I'll get back to that in a little bit, but first I want to give a shout out to the music and art direction. The game has a great look. It's bright, colorful and readable. The terrain types are well differentiated and the important buildings stand out from the background. There are also these helpful dots around buildings that show what will affect them when placed down. Music is good and changes depending on what's going on. It does a good job at staying in the background and not being overwhelming. Same goes for the sound effects. Some quick criticisms before I close out. I'd love better in-game readability when countering an enemy army, like I mentioned. I don't want to bring out a calculator. And some unlocks feel like they only exist to muddy the card pool. I especially dislike the river terrain. It doesn't have a lot of strong combo options, and the ones it does require a lot of setup to get working. That would be fine normally, but Drop Duchy is a heavily randomized game, so it's hard to justify going for a river build that takes a lot of effort to make work, especially when you can just go with something more reliable. You can absolutely get screwed by bad RNG, no matter what difficulty you're playing on. Other than that, I highly recommend the game. It's a fantastic Tetris-style puzzle game with a surprisingly amount of depth. It does a great job at introducing mechanics gradually and getting more complex over time. And like I mentioned at the start, I can easily see myself picking this up anytime I'm craving a good puzzle game for many years to come. Let me know if you played Drop Duchy and if you got any recommended builds. And as always, thank you for watching.